Hello, everybody. It is I, Root Beer, and I'm doing a Bavsagra deck profile because I made a stupid bet on Twitter a long time ago that if we ever got like some sort of evil version of Overdress, that I would SP out the deck, and then Trick Moon got revealed. So, yeah, here we are. Ooh, shiny. Also, should probably do more like YouTube content so that one day Bushiroad may grant me the honor of revealing a mediocre OTT card. So let's get into the deck profile. We're going to start with the no-brainer stuff. We have our ride line, so grade 1, when you ride it on top of the grade 0, you can Soul Blast, search a sword or shield. Grade 2, when ride from the grade 1, it gets you an order back from your drop zone, so you can drop an order for your ride line and then get it back immediately. And then you have Bavsagra. When she's armed, you can soul charge 1, call something from the drop call a grade 1 or less from the drop zone, so 90% of the time Trick Moon. And then if she is armed with 2 or more cards, you can Soul Blast 2, retire your opponent's front row, and she gets a crit. Yep, 2 or more. Just wanted to make sure that I was reading the card right. And then, of course, you have 4 PGs and then 3 additional copies of Bavsagra for your Persona rides. These are your no-brainer cards. Not much discussion needs to happen about them, so, get them out of the way quickly. Next. So, getting into the actual substance of the deck, we have 4 copies of Sealed Dragon Adarla. Is that what it's called? Sealed Blaze Dragon Adarla. So this is a grade 3 that when it's placed, you can counterblast 1, arm an order from your drop zone, and then if your Vanguard is armed with 2 or more orders, she gets plus 5k. So it's a big beater card, but the more important thing is that it lets you get an additional order armed so that you can kind of get your power plays going, and that kind of helps get its own 5k, but it also helps with the next card, which is 4 copies of Trick Moon. So Trick Moon is kind of your power play. It gets It gives plus 10k on boost to the boosted unit per armed card on your Vanguard. So it can be up to plus 20, which is quite big. 25k boost is pretty sizable. It should get most things into good damage numbers. And then also, when it's placed on back row center behind the Vanguard, you can countercharge 1. So what will probably happen is you arm a card, you call back a Trick Moon that you probably dropped for your ride line or something, and then you countercharge 1. So next, we're going to talk about our... Sorry, gotta move everything down. Going to talk about our arms ratios. So first, 4 copies of Spear because it says when it's played, you can arm an additional card, and so that's super important because all your best effects happen when you have 2 or more armed cards, so getting an additional arm is very good, and you play 4 copies because you want to guarantee finding it. It also gives you plus 10k, which is pretty nice for offense. And then 2 copies of Sword. I'm kind of debating this one. I feel like Spear is better most of the time because it guarantees you have both your arms ready, because 90% of the time you will search out your 1 copy of shield with the grade 1 in the ride line. So, once you have the shield, you're just kind of looking for your right arm for the power boost, and also to just kind of get all of your abilities active. And between the two, Spear is kind of better, so you play less copies of Sword for that. It does have kind of a useful effect where you can counterblast 2, deal a burn damage. Once you're kind of done arming everything, you don't need a ton of counterblast, and also this one arms itself for a soul instead of a counterblast, so if you only have the 2, you could maybe arm shield with a counterblast and then find some other way to arm this with a soul blast and then find a way to arm shield with a counterblast, probably with Adarla, and then you can get the countercharge back by calling Trick Moon. So yeah, I'm kind of debating maybe just going down to 1 copy of Sword, just because you can still search it out with the grade 1, so if you happen to open shield, you can still just search out your Sword and have both your arms in hand guaranteed to try and work with. But other than that, I feel like Spear is generally preferable, just because Spear is more likely to guarantee both arms early if you don't find the Adarla. So yeah. kind of not sure about Sword. Next we have 4 copies of Travis, so he was a piece of Eugene support that says, when something was retired in the main phase, you can counterblast 1, soul charge 1, retire a rear guard, and then he gets plus 10k until end of turn. So, you play it because Bavsagra retires the front row, so you can activate his main phase retire. That gets you a 3rd retire for, counterblast 1, effectively soul blast 1 because he soul charges, so that's not terrible. And then Bavsagra also has the crit, and he has plus 10k, so that's a sizable rear guard. If you boost it with Trick Moon, he's 45, or even just a regular grade 1, he's still 28, which is pretty good. And then I have 2 more copies of Halibadra, the grade 2 from the Ride line, so I already mentioned what it does on the Vanguard circle, but it does have an additional effect where if your Vanguard is armed, it gets another 5k, so I kind of just chose it because I was kind of looking at the deck lineup, and I'm like, I have 8 front rows, but maybe just have a couple more to be safe, so he's just a 15k booster. It's not great, but I'm not really sure what else to play right now. And then, as the last 2 spots, just to kind of fill out the rest of the deck, I have 2 copies of this grade 1. So what it does is, when it boosts, you can discard an arms card and then draw a card. So this just kind of helps you filter out extra arms, because once you have both of them on your Vanguard circle, shield is never going away, and you only really rearm your right arm if you activated Sword effect, which I feel like you don't do as much. And if you have Spear on, I feel like you're just not going to replace it unless you think the burn damage is going to be really necessary. So this is nice filtering to just get kind of those dead cards out of the way. And then I'm just going to do some quick editing magic to get my triggers on the field. So, we have my trigger lineup. So, as of right now, I am playing 7 crits, 4 draws, 4 heals, and the overtrigger. So, I think the 4 draws are mandatory. Bavsagra doesn't have a ton of advantage. The only thing that draws a card that directly kind of pluses your hand is the Spear, and then you also have that grade 1 booster that can filter out kind of dead orders. So those are the only ways that Bavsagra can really dig for more cards right now. So I think minimum 4 draws is just kind of mandatory to get through your deck and find your necessary pieces. 4 heals are a no-brainer. Overtrigger is a no-brainer. Those things are busted. Where I'm maybe reconsidering my lineup is the criticals. So in playing the deck, I have found that when you don't have the Trick Moons, the deck doesn't actually get all that much power outside of your main column. Like, Bavsagra can pretty consistently get to like 30 to 50k just off of Trick Moon. You can usually find the 1, but then you don't really have any guarantees that you'll have the other ones, because the draw trick, if you don't get your draw triggers or your spears, you don't really have a way to dig through the deck. So I'm really considering maybe cutting 4 crits and playing 4 fronts. I know it sounds kind of crazy to go like full rainbow triggers and to go as low as 3 criticals, but if you think about it, Bavsagra already gets a crit from her own effect, and then Sword can burn your opponent, so you have ways to make up the damage. But then, because you don't have a ton of ways of digging into your deck other than finding spears or getting lucky with draws, like, the front triggers might just help to make up that power loss if you just could not find the Trick Moons. So that's kind of where my head is at right now. And yeah, that's going to be it for the deck profile. Unfortunately, Bavsagra hasn't really made a huge splash in the game so far. Like, in Japan, going by Dexander's blog, it never really posted that many results compared to the other, more obviously strong decks. And while we're only a couple tournaments into Springfest right now, like, so far, it hasn't really gotten in there, right? Like, you have kind of the obvious good decks in Mag, Prison, Bruce, Bastion, and Gravidia. Those 5 are pretty, like, consistently around the top tables, they're all solid picks. And then We also just have like really random third picks that make it in sometime, like Zorga, Flagberg, Phantom Blaster, but we just haven't really seen Bavsagra getting in there yet. So, unfortunately, the deck, I think, because of its lack of draw power, it can't get to its effective rear guards, and so you have Bavsagra herself, who's very strong because your arms give you power. You can call back the Trick Moon, which also gives you power. She herself can gain a crit when she has both arms. So, you have a Vanguard that's around 30 to 50k. It has a crit. You can maybe do burn damage if you have the sword. So, your center column is really strong, but then because you don't really have a way of digging for the other Trick Moons, you don't have a way of really boosting up your side columns. So, when you have the Trick Moons, you have 3 consistently large columns, a crit, and some burn damage, and the deck, and a lot of retire power, so the deck can do pretty decently. But then when you don't find the Trick Moons, I think you drop off a lot, and your side columns become a lot weaker, and suddenly the deck, it just doesn't have enough defensive power, even with the plus 10k off of the shield, because you're not drawing enough cards, and then it's also not getting enough offensive power because your rearguard columns are kind of weak. So I think in future support, I'm kind of looking for stronger power rears for Bavsagra.